Good morning, everybody. Just want to say thanks for Deanna for inviting us here. We're really happy to be here to talk about our project, the IF Library, or Individualized Funding Library. I'm Barry Isaacs. I'm from Surrey Place. I'm Director of Research Evaluation and Education there, and I've been working on this project for the past couple of years. I'll let Michelle introduce herself.
Thanks, Barry. So, as I said earlier, I'm Michelle Petrides. I've been working on the project for a couple of months, not a couple of years, but I'm also here from Surrey Place, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so we're just going to, I guess we'll just dive right into it. This is our project team. We always like to acknowledge our team. It's been a big, it was a big project. So on the organizational level, it was a partnership between Surrey Place, Community Living Toronto, Developmental Services Toronto, and Family Service Toronto. And we had lots of people. Maria Hubert is from Family Service. She's Director of Research there. I don't know if people know her. Frances McNeil, I'm sure many people know her, and she's been doing work in this area for many years, individualized funding and fee-for-service kind of things. Terry Hewitt is our director, or no, our VP of something, clinical services, I believe, and also heads up the DSO. Amelia was the previous Michelle. And we've got our Michelle, and then RAs and IT people on that side. It's been a really great team. I want to acknowledge the ministry. This was an employment and modernization grant that was funded, I guess the second round of that funding. And also the self-advocates and families and agencies from across Ontario that we've worked with. We really absolutely could not have done it without them. So, all right, so I don't think I need to talk to this group much about what individualized funding is, I'm sure, right? Everybody knows about it. I do want to say a couple of things. From my point of view, individualized funding needs to be thought of as a tool, so not an end in and of itself, but it's a tool to help people then self-direct their services and supports, right? With the end goal of inclusion, choice, self-determination, that sort of thing. But to me, it's a tool. In this background section, I think it's important really just to talk, because this speaks to why we did this project. It's important to talk about the evidence around individualized funding. And there's a lot of evidence actually to suggest or to that demonstrates that it's effective actually in increasing in inclusion, promoting inclusion, in promoting self-determination, choice, that sort of thing, for people with developmental disabilities and families as well. But there's also a lot of evidence to say that there's challenges, and that's why we did this project. So it's a complicated thing to actually use individualized funding in an effective kind of way. You have to think about budgeting, you have to think about developing service and supports or purchasing, hiring and maintaining staff. There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. So that's really where we started to get this idea. And go ahead. A lot of the research says, well, what families need and what people need is information. That's a big piece that's lacking in sectors here in Ontario, as well as all over the world, really. When you talk about individualized funding and self-directed supports, people need more information. Also, work we did here in Ontario, Frances and myself did it, with Amelia before this, we found that there were actually a lot of good practices going on in the province itself and in other places, but people weren't really sharing that information very, very well. And so the whole individualized funding library idea was to share that information better by bringing it all together into one place, this website that we developed called the Individualized Funding Library. Okay, so the purpose is to provide users with easy read descriptions of concepts, things having to do with individualized funding and how to use it. And then they get linked to more detailed information. We're hoping people use it as a kind of reference, so continually come back to it as they work on plans and learn about concepts related to individualized funding. We intended it to be used by people with developmental disabilities, their families, and agencies. All right, just how we went around developing it. So we tried to have an inclusive kind of methodology where we included people with disabilities, their families, as well as agencies in pulling this whole thing together. We started with a survey just around resources that people use to help them with individualized funding, and then we followed up with interviews to talk more about those resources. Then we took all that information and we held focus groups across the province. I think we hit every region in the province, and to talk about that and decide, well, what should be in this website? What should the main function of it be, first of all, and what should be in terms of content? And then we put together 2 advisory groups. We put together an advisory made up of family members and agency people, and then an advisory of people with developmental disabilities to help us then think more detailed about the structure, the content, and what this thing was going to look like, basically to help us put it together. And then we did user testing, where we had people kind of test it out, tell us what was good or bad about it, made some adjustments, that sort of thing. And then finally, we launched it back in September. I think we can skip this slide. This is the site map, but I think more importantly now, Michelle's just going to take you through a demonstration of it and show you what the content is.
Thanks, Barry. So this is fitting because this is where I came into the project as well. And so I get to walk you through the actual website, which hopefully maybe will come up. So we've landed on the home page of the IF library here. Hopefully I'm not in anyone's way. And I'm just going to give you a quick walkthrough. I can tell you from personal experience that the first time I looked at it, I explored for 2 full days. So we won't do that here, but I'll hopefully be able to give you a good overview. So we just start with the landing page, which of course is meant to look kind of like a library's landing page, the resource type of website that we were aiming for. And then you just get an idea of what the website is. The planning guide we'll go to later, but I wanted to start by showing you just the main buttons that we have up here. So this is the About page, which is just going to give a good summary of what individualized funding is. We give the examples of passport funding for people over 18 and SSAH, just so folks kind of have an idea of what individualized funding is. And then we make some important points about how it's also referred to as direct funding across Ontario. That's it, not annoying. And that, you know, the purpose of it is to allow you and your support circle to purchase supports and services that meet your individual needs, so that it's person-centered. We have a great video here from Inclusion Press, which we link to quite a lot on the website, especially around advocacy. So we have a drop-down menu here. It's called Using Individualized Funding. You can go to the page here, which also will bring you to the same options that we saw on the drop-down down here. But the way that we broke the website down is getting involved is the first part, planning, which links to things like how to find a planning coordinator, how to spend your individualized funding on that as a way to start. Support workers, so how to employ support workers, how to find them. Community participation is a big one. So if someone were looking, for example, for a TIFS type program, they could go to this community participation page, which links also to My Community Hub, which is a great resource for finding programs and services without going to individual websites. And finally, the budgeting, I'm going to use that now. And so that page is all around budgeting resources. But one I'll just bring you to as an example is getting involved, the first option there. So this website was built to be usable by people with developmental disabilities, their families, and their support workers. Admittedly, we're going to keep working to make it as accessible as possible for people with developmental disabilities. I don't know if we're quite there yet, but user testing gave us mixed results, so we will keep working from that. But this is a pretty straightforward way of saying, it's important to be involved in the decisions about your life, where you live, relationships you have, types of work. And we link to some great resources here around advocacy in particular. I'll let you explore this on your own time, the other categories, but a main feature of the website that I personally find great, and I think we can explore for the last part of this, is the planning guide. And the planning guide is an interactive tool. So there's a sliding tool, a place to enter your age. We do note that if you're supporting someone with a disability, please enter their age, not your own age. And if you're a person with a disability planning for yourself, enter your own age. That was one of the brilliant outcomes of user testing. And so this is sort of little blurb about what the planning guide is. It's to help you get the most out of your individualized funding and identify steps and things to consider at each life stage. So we can use 4 years old as an example, but you'd enter your age there, and then they break it down into 4 categories, as you can see. So there's getting started, there's planning, getting support, and then finally getting and saving money. So one of the major categories that we believe people are going to visit and have been visiting is this getting and saving money option, which then breaks down further under things to do, money, benefits, and reimbursement. So for example, under things to do, it would be something like save for your child's future. So the tabs are all going to come up in this style, and they're always just going to have a pretty easy to read short description of what to do and what to consider, and then it's going to go directly to resources, which are going to exit the website. Not exit the website. So for example, if you're looking at going to Partners for Planning and their section on RDSPs, it's going to bring you out, but you'll always be able to go back to the planning guide here, and reimbursement as well is broken down into everything that we could find around reimbursement programs for that age group. So you'll see here that it's SSAH, for example, but if you then change it to the person being 18 years of age, you're going to see different things come up, such as passport funding, and the LIN family managed home care option. Another final thing I'll show you here is around benefits. So there's quite a few that are broken down here in tabs, which is quite different than, say, the Holland Blur View guide, where it's more of a PDF and you just kind of have to read through it and hope you find something. This, I find, is a little more user-friendly, and you can pull something up and it's going to explain what it is and then bring you down to the PDF or the website. So that is the website in a nutshell, and we're just gonna finish up our presentation here.
Can I ask you?
Absolutely.
All right, so Michelle,
Yes.
Is there an option to sort by regions?
That's a good question.
No,
Okay.
there's not. So we had hoped to be regional. We'd hoped to be regional when we were developing. It's complicated. So sometimes when you maybe go back to try money.
Sure.
Sometimes, yeah, some of the things that pop up are just region specific, and it'll say on there, this is for region kind of thing. But yeah, we're not there. Yeah.
Thank you.
These are our next steps, which I can speak to as well. So, as Barry said, we just launched the website in September, and we've gotten great feedback so far, but there's a lot of things that we want to do in the next few months. And that, first and foremost, is to promote the IF library through presentations like these, having Twitter cards on social media platforms, newsletters, resource directories, I think, would be a great place to put this information, and word of mouth, which hopefully you can help us with. And we're also developing workshops to walk people through the website, because we know that an online resource is a great thing, but if someone doesn't know where to start, then it's kind of a useless thing sitting in nowhere. So we're going to host some workshops, and hopefully through the workshops we can also identify gaps, things like, is it region specific, or we've found in our user testing that there's a search button on the website, but folks seem to want a bigger search button, just little things like that. We're looking to gather feedback on the website through surveys and hopefully focus groups as well. And ultimately, the goal is to improve the accessibility of the IF library. So I didn't build it, but I do have high praise for it. I think it is fairly user-friendly. I think it's written in pretty plain language, but there's always things you can do to make it better, like creating videos, for example, tip sheets. And right now, it's just about to be translated into French. That's being finished up, but we would ultimately like to translate it into as many languages as possible. And so now we just have some discussion questions for the group. Of course, you don't have to follow these guidelines. If something is burning inside, please ask it. But just some general questions we had about if this would be useful to you or the people that you work with. What are we missing, and how would you market it? Who should know about this library? So just some places to start.
Do you have some connections with the housing toolkit?
So that's, has that been launched, by the way?
Yes,
Yeah.
First
So,
draft.
yeah, so we do connect to it in there, I think in the resource planning, the planning guide. Yeah, last time I looked, there was just a sort of some information on it, and
Yeah,
not,
there's like the way to use the housing toolkit, but the rest
but the
was
rest
still
was
to come.
not there, I guess, it's, yeah.
Yeah.
But we will be as soon as that lands, yeah.
And how do you find out about this information? Do people contact you and say it should be on your site? Like, how do you gather those resources that are constantly being?
Yeah, so I think we have a lot of people who are trying to communicate, we're trying to sort of have ongoing communication with around these things. So we're connected to the housing facilitator for Toronto, so we're relying on her to let us know when that thing comes up. So we're just connected to all these people to help us kind of keep things up to date and let us know.
There's also a contact us page on the website and an email address, so we've gotten a few resource suggestions through there, but hopefully as part of the marketing and next steps, that will direct people to there so they can keep us posted.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this website. Like, we'll definitely do it with the participants also.
That's great.
Again, because it's like
Yeah,
obviously like empowering, and then we can walk them through that. And I will send out an email to all of our families, letting them know that this site is available. So this is excellent. Like, it's really cool.
oh, that's fantastic, yeah.
One question: is it accessible for people that are visually impaired, like that their readers will be able to hook up to it and read
Yeah,
it to you?
well, I mean, we talked a lot with our IT team about that. I mean, right now, they're suggesting people just use the screen readers that are available through their browsers. We don't know how that's working, though. I mean, that's an important issue that we're gonna have to sort of sort out if it works well. I don't know if all the pop-ups work with the screen, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Because it would also be great for just because screen readers are really great. So if somebody might not have it or know how to use them, but if you have poor literacy, having that screen reader, because their auditory skills
Yeah.
are so high, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, so I think that's the one thing we want to focus in on our next wave of improvements. So along with all the sustainability funding, we're applying for funds to actually improve it. And accessibility is a big piece of that. Because I think if we were to be honest with ourselves, it's not really accessible to people with developmental disabilities at the moment to sit down on their own. So we really have to improve that piece.
And thank you, because screen readers is a big part of that. And I think
Yeah.
partnering with CNIB was kind of an idea that came up in terms of next wave of funding, make sure it's truly accessible.
Yeah. But what you're planning to do with your clients, sit down with them, is one thing we actually envisioned people doing and hope that they would do that.
I'm an assessor at the DSO.
we meet with families, we connect people to passport funding, people wanna know where and how to use their passport funding. So is there something tangible that we could give to people saying, here's this website, this is where specifically to go? Because I think that's part of the concerns that they have is like, I just wanna know where to go. You know, there's clicks, there's links, there's this and whatever, but then
Yeah.
boom, go here. Like
Yeah,
a little rock card or something.
it's a good point.
So, sorry, maybe a tip sheet for that might
Yeah.
be handy?
Yeah, I think partly that it's something like that, a bit of a tip sheet that we do need. And also to point, I mean, I know that Family Service Toronto, for example, has workshops on using your passport funding. So it's kind of getting people to those as well. Those things probably go up on connectability, I would assume, yeah. I mean, the interesting thing about building this was, I mean, Passport is really the big program in existence that now, yet we were trying to think wider because we want to think big around individualized funding. So I think Passport, in a way, even though it's a dominant program, might have gotten lost in the shuffle a little bit in terms of directing people to that particular issue. I recognize, though, it's important. So, yeah. I mean, I think there is stuff on there that people could kind of connect to and find, but they may have to work for it a little bit.
You know, as a marketing idea, one of the things that Connectability did a long time ago was supply the DSO with flyers on a regular basis. So one of the things that goes out, you know, our marketing budget is nothing.
Yeah.
So that PDF sometimes gets sent to the DSO and they get to print it.
Yeah.
What it does is it means that we're putting something in the package that does not, it's like homework for the parents when they go home with the family. There's something to look at and a URL to dig into. And you know, one of the things that sounds like you're doing with this is it's highly focused on this one specific thing, whereas Connectability is trying to do fill every gap, and plug every dike and do all that sort of stuff. This is really narrowly focused. So, you know, a really keen, short but to the point flyer that says next steps. 1, 2, 3 would probably do really well for marketing the service.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea.
Because you know, a lot of the time you get the family when they're fresh, and you give them a good piece of trusted advice. They'll come back.
You put pictures of money on it.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah, I think the money section gets the most hits.
Probably.
Yeah, we're gonna
Services
get
and
that more
benefits.
upfront.
You either need it or you have it. You don't know how to spend it, which is not very common in Toronto, though, right? For support, you know, I guess agencies, TPAs are probably included on there, but other ones that are, you know, more private, do you have a vetting process? What does that look like if it's there?
Yeah, so we actually didn't include agencies specifically on here because, first of all, there's so many of them.
Right.
I mean, I think what we tried to do was in our connecting with the community section, just highlight various ways and places that people could look at to connect with their community. And in that we weren't thinking specifically supports or services, just get out there.
Right, to those connectors. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, the YMCA, Parks and Rec.
Connectability
Exactly.
All
on
that
there,
stuff.
YMCA, it's not so DS sector specific.
Yeah, there's a lot of places actually where we direct people to Connectability because then it is a huge resource for other things, right? And
Two things I think would be worth going after is HR, all the agencies around new staff and orientation training for individuals to learn about this library and share it as a resource. I don't think it's very specific. It could be anyone could benefit from it. Two is if the FSWs specifically, their teams, learn this product and use this as part of their support tool, I think it would be very sustainable in terms of really learning and using it. So I think there's two areas there that could really be explored if you were to sort of get into the agencies and talk to the right people about
Yeah.
helping people do their jobs in a more effective way and helping families. So I think they're both
Mhm.
really great tools for those two.
Yeah,
Maybe APSW?
Yeah,
Yeah.
APSWs as well, right? So connecting with the regions and just saying this is a service, share it, use it.
yeah,
That's a great idea. We were even thinking of maybe going into meetings around, Zoe's very familiar with individualized supports, ISP in agencies, and going straight to the support workers and showing them the website. I think that's a key way to actually get people to see it.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think but I'm wondering if you're getting at a more strategic approach. Like
Yes.
if we get in at, say, the higher level in agencies, for them to think about how they can use it at an agency level, yeah.
Embed it in their orientations and their
Exactly.
trainings that their
Yeah.
direct service staff, whoever's new to it,
Yeah,
is a tool that's being used to be very effectively used.
yeah. Yes,
Also, while you were saying that, schools, like, right, like going like,
Yeah.
because because obviously this is for the parents too, so like right from kindergarten, like when if they know about this resource, then there's also like a culture of it. And I like dreaming big, and then of course, then we scale it down and down and down. But just thinking about like if you have like kindergarten kid, and they just always knew that their site was there. When they're like older, then they'll be just naturally going to it by themselves because
Yeah.
there was this culture around like, oh, this tells me how I can get these things. No, don't worry, I've just in my brain, because I think this is brilliant, you guys have gotten all the funding that you need, and so you don't even have to worry about it, and then like in a year then you'll have huge, beautiful, like more plain language, like visual art, like stuff. So I just want all the funding in the world for you.
Thank you.
Because it's really great.
Thank
But
you.
schools.
We'll be submitting our application to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, schools is, so we have connected with school boards. So we have a nice connection with Toronto Catholic District School Board, and we're connecting with service providers that are connecting with school boards. So indirectly the Toronto School Board. So we're working on that. But really important. And everybody, by the way, during the development process taught schools. It was really important, yeah.
Oh, one other idea, just for like placing an ad in like the library readers, because parents tend to look there for like free programs for their child if their passport
That's a
fundings are
great
less.
idea.
So yeah, if you have the budget for an ad in the library
Yeah.
magazine, that would be good.
Yeah, cool.
Write all these
That's a
down.
great idea, yeah.
So if we have more questions, we can just contact you guys via the
Yep,
contact and
absolutely.
provide you with-
Yeah, any questions, suggestions, anything. You know, if you want to be involved in assuming we get all the money we need, if you want to be involved in further development process, we would be, we'd welcome it. Yeah. All right. Okay, thanks everybody.